Mr. Sutton, how goes it? How's life in the big city?
Oh, it's yeah, in the small low country, it's
Ah, come on
it's
now.
fantastic, man. It's getting way too crowded. Like we need to tell people
Weather's
that this
weather
is
starting to
not.
break up there. Looking good up there.
Yeah, it's been great in the last like three to 4 weeks. It's been
Oh,
really
okay.
good. Yeah, not looking forward to the heat, but
Yeah, that'll.
it's perfect right now. But yeah, stop telling people that this place is awesome,
I'll
so they
do it. I'll do it.
quit
You can
quit
send them down
moving
to
here.
Jupiter in the summer.
Yeah, exactly. So how you been, man? What's going on?
Man, just working a bunch. This is my first full season in Jupiter down here at Jonathan's Landing. So it was a lot of fun. Had 54 holes, 1,200 members, and then everyone brought their guests. So it was we our tee sheet was booked from 7:30 in the morning until 4:30 every day,
Wow.
all three courses. It's an ant farm. I mean, just craziness. There were people going everywhere, and I'm trying to teach, and I'm over on the far end of the range, and just trying to get everything going. And it's like tin cup. There's shanks going this way. There's pop ups.
You
There's
got to get on the left
people
side of the
hitting.
range,
Yeah, I got to go to the other side. But
except
it's
for the lefties.
yeah, exactly. But the other side of the range is a little bit in the slicer kill zone. So I figured
Mm,
I better just stay right where I am.
I hear you. But you're building the building, right? Is that what we were
We
talking about
Tim
last time?
Cutshaw's coming in. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tim Cutshaw's coming in next week. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do a site visit and take a look. They're proposing building a 2 or 3 bay facility. I think they'll propose a 3, but I think we'll settle with 2. One for me and then one for the fitting and the other
Hmm.
guys and
Yeah.
the other girls and everything else. But it's exciting. It's something that needs to happen. And down here, every place has a building.
Sure.
It's crazy. It's one of the neatest things I've seen as far as this area is really big on instruction. Whereas every place has said, "Hey, you look, what we need to build one. We have to build one. Let's build an overkill." I mean, a buddy of mine just built a 5-bay facility. Spent $4.5 million on theirs. There's another place down the street that has a 10-bay facility going in. It's just
Mm.
it's there's the wealth of golfers down here, not financially, but just there's just so many. It's unbelievable. I was out in California in Palm Desert and been out to Scottsdale a zillion times, and I thought there were a lot of people that played golf out there. It's
Uh, Jupiter's a hotbed.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's I'm very fortunate to be here, so I'm very lucky.
So I think we were chatting before started recording that you came on early in the pod, right? So I think it was like, I mean, it's been 5, 6 years
Yeah,
since since.
it was before I left for Mexico, so it's been a
Yeah.
while.
So for the couple of listeners out there that don't know you, because you're very famous, very popular.
Oh yeah, legend in my own mind.
Absolutely. So take us back to the beginning. Like talk about maybe how you got into the game, and then how the lineage of your career is kind of taking you to where you are now.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to grow up at Colonial Country Club in Memphis, Tennessee, where they had at the time was the St. Jude Memphis Classic before it was moved to Southwind, and so it was really neat. We lived on the 15th tee, so a little par 3. So I'd walk over there and watch the tournament, and like every kid, you're enamored with the tour pros, and wanted to be a tour pro, and dad and mom were always avid golfers, so they played all the time. So it was just a wonderful experience to grow up at Colonial and to be able to see those players play and be able to dream. The coolest thing as a kid, I still love this, is playing the week before the tournament.
Mm,
The grandstands would go up, and you
yeah.
could envision, you visualize yourself over there, and all of a sudden the stands are full of people, but a little bit different. You're shooting 90, so it doesn't have the quite same allure as tapping in for a 63. But we had dreams of grandeur. But so started there, and then ended up teaching in Memphis, and then moved to Florida. Moved to Sandestin, Florida, as we like to call it, LA for Lower Alabama, the Redneck Riviera, if you will. You know, Loved my time and spent 7 years there, and then started to split my time between Naples and Vail, Colorado. Um, had a lot of fun in Vail. Spent 12 years out there, and then started splitting my time between Palm Desert and Vail and Park City. So, it was fun. And then I got a little burned out and had to disappear to Mexico for a couple of years, and taught down at the Four Seasons Punta Mita down there for 5 years, and just kind of chilled out. And now it's time to come back home and get back in the grind of things. But I enjoyed my sunny siestas in Mexico and Latin America, and it was fun. It was definitely different trying to teach and trying to grow your business in a foreign country. It's not quite like it is here.
I think you're teaching a lot of diving lessons there as well, right?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of diving. I don't give away all my secrets now. Just
in the off time, yeah.
A little bit of work, a little bit of diving, and whatever. So not too bad. But got a chance to go diving today. That's what I did on my off day today. So that was fun. Cool. Yeah, it's still a lot of fun. It's it's a lot easier to put some weight on and sink and breathe than it is to hit 2 irons over water hazard to a back right pin.
Well, you said you saw a great white shark, man.
Yeah, I saw a great.
You're swimming with danger there, dude.
I went great white shark cage diving, believe it or not, in Mexico on my 50th birthday, and that was pretty cool. You see the big females, and then and reaching out where you can almost touch them, and that was pretty impressive. And I swore if I ever saw another one, outside of the cage, that I would disappear. So I'm swimming along today, and I see this probably 9 to 12 feet. We'll say it's 12 feet. It probably wasn't that big, but we're going to say it was huge.
Yeah. And
I look at it, and I said, it looked like a bull shark. And as it turned this way and went back around, I saw the tail, and I went, that looks like a great white. So anyway, I got up, and the dive instructor said, well, congratulations. The 3 of us just saw a great white. And I was like, well, had I known, there would have been one less diver in the water.
You'd swim really fast.
Yeah, I'd have straight up. But no, it was fun. It was. It's always a good time to go. It's always good to get away, But I've really enjoyed. I enjoyed the diving while I was in Mexico, and I certainly enjoyed here on the off season. But for me, getting back into teaching full time and really delving back into it has been a lot of fun, and it's been something that I needed to do. It just, I got a little burned out, had some personal problems, and just decided that it was time for me to disappear from life for a while. But I didn't expect it to be 5 years in Mexico, on from this little sabbatical, but it was well worth the time, and it was a great learning experience.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, so who got you into teaching? Like, talk about your influences like early on, because you've skipped some steps there. That was a pretty quick bio.
Well, I didn't want to bore anybody with my lineage, but I started.
That's the interesting stuff, though. We want to how for the young coaches out there, like what was the process like of getting your first job, and then give us a little idea, and we'll get into some swing stuff, obviously.
Yeah, and it's funny, and I'm 54, and you'll know this, but you're not. How old are you now?
I'm your age.
Okay. I thought you were close. And you'll know this. When we started, teaching was a closed shop. I mean, the director of golf, the head professional, and the assistants taught, and they didn't want somebody to come in there. It was like you were stepping on their toes, and the business had not maturated to the point where the needs of the member were first and foremost. That was back when the directors of golf still owned the shop and things like that. And so the business was a lot different. So I was I played golf a little bit on the mini tour. It was the Tommy Armour tour. That's how long ago it's been.
I remember that.
Yeah, I played a little bit, just enough to realize that they're really good, and I don't like to be away from home. So that was about it for the teaching, the golf career for the fat kid here. But I went back home, was playing in some money games, and one of the guys in this golf course had this a great story. So it was 63 holes, and they had like 2,000 members, basically come one, come all, just show up. I think it was like 126.50 were the dues. It was everybody had their own brown bag lunch and the whole deal, and it was their pull carts. And so it was definitely a country club. But lucky for me, the director of golf was going to inherit $5 million when he turned 32 from a trust fund that he had set up from his grandfather. And so Right place, right time. He goes, look, I'm going to inherit this money. I want to play golf for a living. I don't want to teach, but people are wearing me out about teaching. Would you be interested in teaching? And I went, huh. I always spent more time on the less tee helping, or the tee helping my teammates play better than doing it myself. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I was very interested in it. So I said, sure. And I didn't know anything, and the great thing about it was I got to teach. I bet I taught 10 million lessons because it was so cheap. I mean, I think I was charging like $35 an hour, and if you bought a package, I think it came down to where I was paying them to show up. And so I got a chance to teach, for at least 3 years. I taught as much as you could possibly teach. So I got a lot of experience early. Got a chance to find the golfing machine through one of the assistants there who was didn't really enjoy teaching that much, but he was incredibly knowledgeable. So he introduced me to the golfing machine. Guy by the name of Charlie Long, still in Memphis, really good player and phenomenally educated. Just didn't really. Teaching just wasn't his thing. He
So
enjoyed.
he was using it more like as a player, from a player perspective, or
use it more for a player's perspective, and then also he enjoyed teaching the better player. And and at that time, there just weren't that many great players at the club. I mean, it was, if you could break 80, you were pretty good but so I got a chance to do that. And then I got into a little Morad Mac O'Grady stuff, went out and saw him in California, spent 4 or 5 days with Mac, which was.
Did you go to one of the schools?
Yeah, I did. I had the
Okay.
Morad tape with him in the white, and that everybody's seen. Short shorts and everybody's seen. And then let's see.
How long did it take you to get kicked out? Did you do anything to?
I stayed in his good graces for at least 3 or 4 years. We would talk regularly, and then I posted a video of him hitting a shot left-handed, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah, that was on Twitter. So I mean, that was it, and or X or whatever it's called now.
Yeah.
And that was all she wrote. And then the phone went dormant and silent, but I've still got all the notes and all the stuff. So anybody that wants the notes for Moorhead, just give me a call. Take that, Mac.
Exactly.
No, he was, anybody that knows Mac knows he's a savant when it comes to golf swing. Just obviously has some sort of issue personally. And, we all know this, and it's just a shame that whatever's up there just didn't gel, because I mean, the guy could have given the game so much more than he already did. Our profession. I mean, you gotta give the guy credit for coming up with 3 different swing models. At least that's what it was when I'd gone through the
I've seen all the papers, and I
go
to a school, but like, I feel like if you've been in the teaching game long enough, you get that trickle down of talking to somebody that's been there. And I've had so many people on the pod that were in.
Yeah, it was really funny. I asked Bender. I said, "Okay, well, I know you spent a lot of time with Mac. I'm going out to see him for a week. What should I do?" And he goes, "Get a lot of sleep." And I was like, "That's
stays up all night, right? Like you're up all night just talking about stuff."
Unbelievable. Meet me here at 8, and he goes like this, and he spits it out, and it keeps going for 12 hours. And then, you break, you're like, Mac, I need a break. God, you're killing me. You're killing me. Can I get a break? And he's like, yeah, you go eat a banana and come back in 5 minutes. And off he goes again. But it was fun. So anybody that had a chance to go through that probably enjoyed
so
doing
there's
that.
there's been so many stories, because again, some of my friends that have been on the pod have told some great stories. What's your best Mac story? And then is there anything in your teaching now that you sort of, whether you use the language or not?
Oh, I still use
now. Yeah.
Oh, a ton of Mac stuff, a ton of Homer Kelly stuff, a lot of biomechanical stuff. After the golfing machine and Morad stuff, then I started getting into 3D motion analysis and force plates and all that stuff. Or they were pressure plates back then. Didn't really do much of anything, but it was really cool for me. I just think that just the conglomeration of all that information, just kind of came out in my instruction. I was probably a little bit more technical than I probably should have been at the time. Now I try to say as little as I can and get the most out of it. I think that's where I've probably gotten a lot better. But yeah, I mean, all that stuff has just been invaluable. It's been such a blast. I've really had fun. I'd love to go through it again. And I wish we had videos of that, but I'm sure that would have been nixed right in the get go.
Well, it'd be interesting to find the guy first, right?
Yeah,
He's
I
like
think
Bigfoot.
he's like Bigfoot. I
But
think
I
he's
mean,
over.
to get
He's in
him,
Japan.
to like look at 3D and all the stuff that, I mean, he was way ahead of the curve without any measuring device, which is
Oh, it's
unbelievable, right?
unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
and what he would have been had he been able to go to, you know, the Stedman Clinic in Vail, Colorado, where they do a lot of research, or up at Finney's place, or spend time with Jacobs and Manzella. I mean, could you imagine if Mac had spent time with Jacobs and Manzella? I mean, my God, what they would have come up with, it would have been pretty amazing. Not to leave anybody else out who's doing research, but all those guys are spend time with Sasho and Quan and the whole, and all those guys would have been amazing. But other than that, who knows? I guess he just had different plans and was a different bird. But my best Mac story, now that I think about it, I asked him, I said, "What's the best shot you've ever hit?" And he says, "All right." And I'm thinking I took a 2-iron, I flipped it upside down and hit it, left-handed. He said there was this green in Texas, and he said it was sitting like this. And he said, you're coming into the green this way, but he's whipped it over here. And he said, there's this big oak tree right here. And the green, got to go around the oak tree to the green that was sitting right there. And he said, well, I could take like a 5-iron and I could hit a little cut, but it was gonna run. It would run too much, or it wouldn't get high enough. So he said, what I decided to do was take a wedge, open up a sand wedge, and half blade cut it. So it spins around, it went around the tree, landed on the front of the green, and chewed back towards the hole. And he said, I hit it about 12 feet, tap it down.
Oh my gosh.
But of course, I go out there and I'm hitting these blade,
trying to recreate it.
These hit it right in the forehead blade sand wedges. And sure enough, you can get it to go like that. I mean, how you could try that in competition is beyond me, but it was, that was pretty cool. Him getting a chance to hit shots right and left-handed were pretty good. He had the Hogan, he had Hogan PCs. That's how right-handed, left-handed, 1 through pitch and wedge, sandwich, somewhere around in there. And it looked like a yard sale. There was crap everywhere. And he's swatting balls right-handed, left-handed, talking about everything. And it was quite an interesting thing. I mean, I think it would have been really neat to have seen him talk to Tiger or really talk to some of these cerebral guys that are next level in feel as time went on. But I think he's over in Japan now. I think he went over with his wife, and he did leave Palm Springs. I know he came out to Bighorn a couple of times with me, but there's still some videos online with that. But that's been, God, 15, 20 years ago. It's been a long, long time. He was fun.
Got coughs all of a sudden.
Uh-oh.
So we have a mutual friend, and I didn't know if I'd bring this up or not, but you can share anything that you can safely say. But my student William McGirt.
Oh yes.
Wait, you just made me think about it when you said Bighorn, because he's told me so many really unbelievable stories about practicing there. So talk about how you guys met, and then
it was funny. I can't remember, and and I was thinking about it earlier. I can't remember. He was hitting balls on the range. The academy was on the canyon side. We had 2 golf courses, and he was over hitting balls on the canyon side, which was a little bit more quiet, a little bit bigger, a little bit deeper range, and was very hospitable, very nice, and and like saying hello to everybody. I'm going to walk up and down the range, and I didn't say much more than how are you doing, sir? I hope I don't know the guy from Adam. I'm like, how you doing, sir? I hope you're doing all right. And he stopped and we started chatting for a second. And then the next day, and he ended up staying there with a member. And off the top of my head, I can't remember who it was.
I should know that because he's told me, and I can't remember the name.
Yeah, I
But
should
he
know
became very
myself.
good friends with a guy. He just passed away, I think, from cancer. But
Oh,
yeah, so
really?
yeah, so continue. Yeah, I
But
think I know where you're going with this one. This is good.
yeah, so he started coming out, and then Bighorn at the time, I was helping them a little bit with some marketing stuff as well. And I said, I've got an idea. I went to the owner and I said, I've got an idea. This tour player's here. He doesn't have a sponsor on his bag. What if we gave him just a place to practice and play? I know he's out in the Carolinas and he's probably cold and he wanted to be on the West Coast for a little bit and have the opportunity to come out here. And they were like, yeah, if you want to talk to him, bring him up. And so the three of us sat down with Mr. Hubbard and Gert and myself, and they penciled in a deal for him to come out and play in practice. And it was really neat because he was very hospitable, very, very friendly, would play and practice with everybody, where we had some other pros on both tours, all three tours actually. And some of them would be very interactive, some of them would not be, and some of them would just go as far away from human contact as they could. And so, but William was definitely not one of them. He was great. But so we got a chance to spend a little time together and play a little bit. And at the time he was struggling his way. We would laugh about, I'd go like, how the hell did you get through Q school? I mean, you got to tell me about what is it about going to PGA West? It's got to be like walking through a minefield. And if you haven't played PGA West, I mean, you have to go play the stadium. They play 4 rounds at the stadium during Q school every other year. And it's impossible. And and when you go play it, like I tell everybody, I said, we go play the tips. I said, by the way, that's the easiest it's going to play compared to what these guys do. And, we would talk about different stories, and, he got through and then just kept coming out there and got a chance to meet Sarah and his son, Mac at the time, who was a mere baby, who's now what, 12. He's been with you for a couple years.
Yeah.
Big boy. So it was great. And then, what was fun is William and I got to experience a lot of that lifestyle out there of the rich and famous. And I can go on and on and on and on about stories about, okay, you think, this is impressive or that's impressive. I mean, just a prime example is, how over the top this place was. We had a jewelry store in the golf shop. And when I say jewelry store, I'm not talking about a $5,000 ring. I'm talking about rings and bracelets and necklaces that are sitting under the counter right where you sign your cart ticket. And it's $100,000 ring, a $500,000 watch, and you're just like, what? It's crazy. Yeah, it was crazy,
Yeah, he's told me about some of the matches they had out there. They'd have 12 carts. Like there's no rules, right? It's
no rules.
Yeah, it's just, don't be an asshole. Like that's the only rule.
That was pretty much it. Mr. Hubbard tried to get into another club out there. They said no. No, actually, they said yes to him, no to his buddy. And he says, well, to hell with that. So he bought Bighorn, which was a Westinghouse property. And his sole thing was to build the greatest club in Southern California. And I tell you what, it's, just the crazy things. I mean, like they have rake boxes for the bunkers. You lift the box, put the rake in, it sinks down to the ground. You put the,
oh my gosh, who would ever think of that? That's amazing.
Oh, and then and this is another thing that's pretty interesting. Is Mr. Hubbard was a visionary in respect that if you were the first person off and the maintenance had been there, he says you play and there's no divots, there's nothing. The golf course is perfect. He said, well, why, if you decide to play at 2:00, are there divots everywhere all over the fairway? So he said that everybody will sand their divots and pick up their divots. So it's the only place I've ever been where you had to pick up your divots and sand your divots every single hole. If you didn't, you're out.
That's incredible.
Yeah, God rest his soul. He was great to me, and it was a wonderful 7 years. A lot of fun in California. A lot of margaritas, a lot of beer, and a lot of partying out there. California was a fun place.
So cool. All right, so let's transition into some teaching stuff, right? So I know you're big into technology, and we've talked a lot about what's new coming down the pipe, and AI has been a big subject. I think I just did a podcast last week with a non-golf professional, and we were talking about AI, and I'm like, yeah, it's already here, and
Yep.
it's coming, not not just in the golf business, but in the world. So, talk us through a little bit about some of the things you've added to your technology toolbox.
Yeah, I'm been lucky enough to spend a lot of time with Sportsbox on their advisory board, doing some stuff with them, and as best I understand AI, and that basically can tell you that I'm getting old because I don't really understand what the hell it does. I just know that a couple of things, you ask it a couple of questions and it spits out a lot of information.
Yeah.
But for lack of a better explanation, you make the swing and it continues to learn your propensities, its tendencies over millions and millions and millions of these golf swings, and it can see things and it learns and maturates and gets better with the information it spits out. And the cool thing about Sportsbox is, I've had a couple different 3D systems, and they were all wonderful. From the 12 sensor AMM system that they use at TPI,
Mm-hmm.
um, to gears and all the other systems that are out there. But the thing about it is, you were stuck in an environment where it was pretty sterile. It was more like a lab. With AMM's thing, you had wires all over you. With gears, you had the suit on and you were inside. And, so this has been the first technology that you can actually stand on the tee and, and shoot it. And,
Yeah.
and kind of see now. And I'm not here to say that the accuracy of this thing is 150%. I'm here to say that it's a heck of a lot better than nothing.
Right.
It can show you trends and it can show you things. It's kind of like when TrackMan first came out, everybody was like, how accurate is this thing? Or when Foresight first came out, how accurate is this thing? Which one's better? The bottom line is you're using it to teach fields. You're using it to watch you as the instructor. I'm just looking at it as another tool to say, hey, look, you know what? It looks like the head's moving, but how much is the head moving?
Mm-hmm.
Is it moving more side to side or up and down? Well, that I can easily see, and I don't need to know to the degree, or to the inch. I just need to see that, hey, it is moving a whole bunch. Rotationally, or are the hips outracing the shoulders outracing the hips, things like that. And Sportsbox has been great. There's another system out by the Fenris Group, which is a really, really cool system as well.
Motion to coach.
Motion to coach.
We can mention it. They're
Matter
not a
of fact,
sponsor.
what's
Yeah.
that?
So they're not a sponsor yet, but if we can mention
Oh, very nice. Yeah, that'd be great. I
it.
love their stuff. I think they're phenomenal. Matter of fact, Kevin Noble from TrackMan went over there.
Yep. I'm actually working with them and possibly bringing it in.
I think I was on over in Tampa. It's pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
The only thing it had, the sampling rate was a little slow at first, but that's going to be neither here nor there here soon. But AI has been great, and I think it's going to only get better, and it's going to help. I think it's going to help the average golfer. They'll video their swing, and it'll spit out some information. Hey, you need to look at your shoulders. Hey, your shoulders can be open to address, and this can cause an out-to-end path, and this could be the reason why you're hitting slices or or pulls or what have you. So I think that it'll continue on to get better. It'll continue on to get more accurate, and I think that markerless systems are definitely the way of the future. I know that Gears is working on one. I know that Swing Catalyst has one. I know that the Fenris people have one, and Sportsbox. And, I think that they're all fantastic. I mean, I just don't see any downside to these things. And, I just think we're a little early on the curve, and everybody just needs to take a deep breath and relax.
Yeah.
Just go off. We're not launching the shuttle. It is what it
I
is.
think, it's what I was talking with my friend, Jason Bellotti that I had on that's in that space and, on the business side. And it's no different in golf is we're just trying to save time and we're trying to be more efficient. And then we're trying to, get to the solution quicker. Right. So all those old systems are great, but they required setup time.
Sure.
K-Vest and AMM, and it's all awesome. And is it, how realistic is it? Because you've got stuff on you, right? So
Right.
now it's amazing what we can do with an iPhone.
It's
It,
crazy. I mean, to
it's
sit there and
insane.
think that I can look at somebody and see what their trail knee's doing, what their rear elbow's doing, what their head's doing, what their rotations are
Yeah.
doing. I mean, even as I said, whether it's accurate to 90%, 95%, whatever, 80%. I mean, at least you're being able to see kind of what's going on, So it's been fun. But like I said, I use technology more, and this is what I can't stress enough to young coaches. The technology is there to audit you as the professional. Prime example, I had a person the other day that was, you've got horizontal impact on the club face, horizontal offset on TrackMan, and they were getting negative values. They're creeping towards the heel, and what's getting ready to happen is they start going that,
Voldemort.
yeah, you've got out of the 10 things you can say, 9.5 of which will cause the uncontrollable shanks for the rest of the hour, and the only a half thing, and you just go, well, you need to do this, and you kind of go, all right. So, but anyway, so I chose my path, and I'm watching the negative numbers cycle back towards zero, which would be the center club, and even some on the toe. So,
It's a good thing.
so now all of a sudden I know that I'm moving in the right direction. And then, so I also use it to teach feels a lot. All of a sudden, I don't get too bound up in the numbers, but I use the numbers to teach feel. Hey, look, let's try to keep it between X and Y, and then they hit this one and they don't quite get there. They do too much and they get the feeling. And so I think that technology is necessary. It's being utilized in the right way, and it's certainly. I mean, you and I came from grease pencils on the analog one camera
on the
view all the way up.
TVs.
Yeah, I mean, all the way up to now you've got an iPhone that's spitting out 3D information, and and I know that Fenris is working on a lot of stuff with ground reaction forces through the phone.
Yeah.
Without force plates. I don't know how that happens, but they've figured something out there. It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. So it's young coaches, if you're not taking advantage of all this technology, you are missing the boat. If you're scrolling on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, just trying to figure out how to shallow the club or how to bow your lead wrist to the top, and that's all you're focusing in on, you're missing the boat. There's just so much out there. And as you well know, it's such an open door policy now. I mean, in 1992 is when I first started teaching. There was a particular top 1% teacher at the time, and I said, hey, I'd love to come shadow you. That had gone take lessons from. I'd love to come shadow you and kind of see what you do, and because I'm new to the business and I'd like to learn. He said, sure, for $5,000 a day, you can come out as long as you want.
Wow.
That was
yeah.
And
I've never charged anybody to shadow me.
No, but my point is that's how a closed door shop was. Now, if I called you and I said, hey, look, I've got this new professional, as long as he's not competing with you in your area, I got this new professional, he wants to learn. You're like, carte blanche, come over. I know that Tony Ruggiero and Hackett over at Old Palm, they have people over there all the time, and they're doing some great stuff. And there's just such an open door now with technology and with training and everything else. It's such a delight. I only wish that I could back my career up another 30 years and start over.
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
I lost 8 years between college and when I was 30 that I was not paying attention or just didn't have the influences, that it's your environment. I mean, not that I had a bad, start to my career, but
I think everybody has.
The guys now, the young guys now are so far ahead of us. It's unbelievable.
I listen to some of these kids talk who have never taught lesson one. All they've done is learn on the internet.
Yeah.
Whether it be Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, not YouTube, TrackMan University, and all these different certifications. They spit out some stuff, and I have to go. They start using these terms, and I start going, okay, wait a second. External rotation. Okay, this supinate. Okay, I got all that. And I'm an exercise science major, so I'm supposed to know what the hell all those things mean anyway. But you start talking about abduction, adduction, and external rotation, and all of a sudden, you watch people's eyes, the curtain come down, their eyes glaze over. But, some of that's necessary, but some of it's not.
So go back. Let's backtrack a little bit. Go back to your shanker, okay? Because this is very interesting to me, and I think to the audience. And we can go deeper into like what we like the things that we think cause shanking. So, but describe what you saw in your player, and then the prescription and how you improved that player.
It was funny. A lot of the shanks, and it's Mike Melizzi and I we've traded swings back and forth this season. It seems like he's gotten all the super inside into out shankers, and I've gotten all the out to in shankers.
Yeah, it can happen either way, right?
And it's
Yeah.
so funny because we'll trade videos back and forth and going, okay, this guy was bouncing them off the walls today. What'd you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
Not picking on anybody, but just trying to learn so we can get somebody better. I mean, this particular person was coached by their husband, who was a reasonable player, and just poor perception as far as the thoughts of what they needed to do. Get a little bit closer to it. All of a sudden now she's right on top of it, falling into her toes. And all of a sudden now the club comes out. We get the hand path comes out, the heel comes out, and so just cleaning up some setup stuff. And it was interesting. Jason Bale did something. That's the note to remind me that I have a thing to
Yeah, we started
deal with
early.
you.
Sorry, it's okay.
But where'd I go? Here we go. There we go. But he was on it, and he said something that was really interesting. He was like, if you're starting off in the business, get back into or become really good at the setup stuff and the low hanging fruit. And I was thinking about it, and one of my big things has always been cleaning up setups. I'm like, look, there's no excuse to have a bad setup. It's the only thing in golf we have 100% control over. We should be able to set up and look like a tour pro, barring some sort of physiological issue.
So how would you describe like to that player, like what's your, because we all have our preferences or what, like how would you describe a good setup to that particular, and it was a woman, right?
Right.
Yeah.
For her, it was understanding where the club was as far as the play, the plane line coming up through her body. What, was the cut pointing at her belt line? Was it pointing at her belly button? Was it pointing at her zipper?
So that's more like her hand position, whether they're
right.
How many people tell you that I'm trying to get the club flat on the ground and they go into older deviation and
exactly.
Is that kind of what she was doing?
Yeah. I had her. She was too much older deviation, too close. And so what I did is I backed her up a little bit, dropped her hands a little bit, and then just stepped her back and said, hey, look, and her other perception was, well, if she's that close to it, the club's not going to work around. It's going to go up. And so she's just, chopping wood, beating snakes in the garden. And it's just rolling the club, and it's the heels coming right at it. And it's, it's shank central. So helping her set up a little bit better, making sure she didn't have quite so much ulnar deviation, making sure she had a right distance from the golf ball, and then really just going back to just being natural and being relaxed and having athletic motion. Just have some rotation. Let the body drive the arms, and when we did that, all of a sudden the strikes came off the heel. They started moving out towards the center of the club. We even got some on the toe side, which was a little bit better.
Where do you like to see the pressure in their feet?
Setup. I like to see it kind of on the laces of the shoes, on the bow nuts
behind the balls of the feet.
Yeah, kind of somewhere around in there.
Yeah.
Sadly, we don't have pressure plates quite yet in Jupiter, so I can't get really too specific on that. Yeah. But when I did, though, that's kind of where I would have it. And I think that once people understand where they are and how they set up, and then they're balanced in three-dimensional space, then I think they have a better idea how to move. They just don't understand that when you put your body in a bad position, homeostasis, which keeps you upright and from falling down, starts to react. You start getting out on your toes, and the club's going to go out and away, and you're going to go backwards, or you're going to throw it from the top, so you rock backwards. A lot of that can be cleaned up by a setup. But going back to what Jason said, I think that's it. Going back and starting from the setup, and just cleaning things up piece by piece. And if you get a lot of things happening in early, a lot of things late take care of themselves. And I think for the lady that I had the shanker was just improper perceptions and in a position setup wise where she couldn't do what she was capable of, and all she could do was hit hosel rockets off into right field, and kind of look like 10 Cup.
Well, a lot of times they don't even know where they're hitting it on the club, right? Like, because
No,
I get that all the time. It's like, yeah, I'm hitting it off to the right, and I said, well, do you know where you're hitting it on the club? And usually they'll say the toe.
yeah,
It's like it's the shaft, right? It's like it's unbelievable how you got to like guide them and like, okay, well, let me give you this information. Like, what would you do? Well, you definitely wouldn't get closer to it in most cases, right?
yeah.
Maybe let's get a little farther away. Let's learn what the toe feels like. So how did you guide her into the shape change after the setup?
I just I put a jam of stick in the ground, at 45 degrees to her shaft line, and just made her go around that thing. Or I stuck my foot out and she went under my foot. I'm like, look, this thing's engineers designed this thing to sit on an angle. It's got to work around your body. You're using it like it's like it's a broom. You just I think once you clean up people's ideas and they realize that once they're balanced, once they're set up correctly, pieces of the body kind of turn, and all of a sudden things happen, and forces and pressure shifts occur, and all of a sudden now you can move. And I think a lot of people get out of balance at a dress, so cockeyed at a dress, that it just makes it impossible for them to move. I would even go so far as to saying that what the TPI showed us, about the body beforehand, will lead into the poor setups and things like that. And so I can't say enough good things about that as well. I mean, I think all young instructors need to go through, the TPI training and figure out how the body is affecting the mechanics of the golf swing. I mean, Greg and Dave are geniuses, but their impact on the game you can't even begin to thank them enough for what they've done and what they continue to do. And they're continuing to influence products that are coming out to measure these things and to get movement screens and into more of an AI generated thing. And it's pretty neat to see what they've started.
Are you still using ProScreen AI?
I am using ProScreen and
talk a little bit about that. How that's
yeah, ProScreen is, you take the movement screens, you run people through a movement screen. Let's just use an overhead squat, for example, and you're using their iPad. And much like Sportsbox or Fenris, they're taking that information and breaking it down into angles, so we can see all of a sudden if the ankles have limited mobility, if there's some scapular issues, if there's lower back issues, what have you. And so you run them through all these tests. Same thing that Greg and Dave are doing.
So you can actually just shoot it. It's just like we talked about with the phone, right? You're just shooting, like taking their video, doing the screens with the iPad, and it spits out this information.
Right. So a prime example is when they have, with like the disassociation with the shoulders and the hips. It's actually measuring the degrees that you're rotating. So you can actually see, when you do make this motion, how much disassociation there is, if there's any, how much the shoulders are turning, how much the hips are turning, or what have you. So it's internal and external rotation of the hip, of the right and the left hip, your balance and all that stuff. So it's been really neat. And I think that I'm sure there are other products out there that I'm not familiar with, but I do know that ProScreen, it's a really neat thing. And it's taking the movement screens and just putting a little AI twist on it and helping it to just take it to the next level. Because quite frankly, I'm not a doctor. I can't see a lot of those things, and it just makes it easier for me. And I need easy. I need low hanging fruit. I'm just a golf pro.
Yeah, right. So what are, if you can answer this, it's kind of a tough question, but thinking back to like what we used to teach before we had all these measuring devices, is there anything or a couple of things that you've changed your tune on now that we actually know the truth?
I mean, I hate to. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a huge TrackMan buff. I love the TrackMan, and I think it's been the most fun thing. Thank God there wasn't a TrackMan around when I was a kid, or I'd have never left the range. It fascinates me to no end to hit a ball and go, okay, how do I change my angle of attack? I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. All right, that's just the first parameter. What can I do for the second? So on and so forth. The ball flight laws. The face starts it mostly the ball starts mostly in the direction of the face, curves away from the path with a centered hit. A lot of gear effect. I'm very, very big on influence, and getting gear effect or understanding gear effect and seeing it across the bag that I never really paid that much attention to. Yeah, I had Dr. Scholl's, but you spray it on the face for a couple minutes and watch him hit a couple balls, and that was about the last you fiddled with it. I credit Foresight for coming out and really pushing the face impacts with their unit and really pushing that side of the thing forward is to say, hey, look, this stuff's very important that we know.
Do you own both, or do you just have?
No, I just have TrackMan.
I just bought a Foresight. We haven't got it yet, but I'm gonna.
For
portability, I think it's great, and I just want to have another.
Sure,
something.
I think if you have the opportunity to have both, it'd be great because from what I understand, and I'm not an expert, from what I understand, is the swing data is, if you want more of a bigger picture, you lean more towards the TrackMan side. If you want to look at ball data, you lean more towards the Foresight side. Mm-hmm. Whether that's true or not, that's probably not for me to say. But I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them. But if you could have both, heck, I mean, why wouldn't you? But I love what James. Fortunate. Yeah. I mean, and you look at a guy like James Lights. I mean, here and Manzella and Jacobs. I mean, there's guys that anytime any new technology comes out, whether it's a $5 piece of equipment or a $500,000 piece of equipment, they get it.
Yeah, Lights is the king.
Yeah, I mean, he's why measure. Yeah. Why not measure if you can, or right. So I think the ball flight laws were really interesting. Gear effect was another good one.
But as far as like swing, like just think about misnomers. I don't know. I know it's a tough question, but I mean, I've got plenty that I could bring up that like I can't believe I was teaching that 15 years ago.
I mean,
now that I know the truth.
Yeah, I think that you just continue to get better and you become more efficient at what you do. I mean, I look back I figured if I've been teaching for 32 years full time, I look back and I say probably the first 10, I had no idea what I was doing. And I had 3D motion analysis. I had 4-camera video, 4 pressure plates, and a very rudimentary ball launch monitor. And I look at it and I went, no, I don't know how anybody got any better. I had all the information. It just couldn't put it all together. And there just wasn't, it just takes time to put that together. And it takes time to realize that how to deal with Mr. Johnson, who's a quadruple type A, versus how to deal with Mrs. Johnson, who's just a field player. And then their son who happens to be analytical and they want to know everything. So it just
the EQ versus the IQ, right?
And I think that's where TrackMan and 3D motion analysis and sports box and motion to coach and all these and Swing Catalyst, all these great companies are just helping us to be more efficient. You take one golf swing and you know what's going on. Now, how we fix it's totally different. That's going to make you individual, me individual, and anybody else. But having the ability to have that stuff is great. It's really cool that now that proposing a building and technology into a club is not you talking like you have 3 heads. I remember the first time I said I told Sandestin I wanted them to build a facility. Because we could draw more people to the resort and do this, that, and the other. And, what they built and what we should have built are 2 different things. And, but they wanted to spend as little as possible just because not their fault. It's just the way it was back in the day. And then now you get there's a club down here that's has a 360-degree range and a 10-bay facility.
It's insane.
That's Jason Sutton money right there, baby.
I wish I had one more bay. I need a putting bay, but I'm blessed. We just upfitted my bay. We're in the process of upfitting my bay just with new
Right.
computers and TVs and
That'd be fun.
right, because it hadn't been upfitted since the building was built in 2017, which is great. But we just got to continue to improve and get better. And I'm
Yeah.
fortunate that the club understands it brings value.
Well, it has a lot
members.
to do with, it has a lot to do with you and your expertise. I mean, if you weren't worth your salt, they wouldn't be doing it. But on a side note, I do want to ask, I saw where your son on social media had gotten through the first round of qualifying for the US 68, I believe.
Yes.
68. That's pretty good. So, and he's playing in an event right now. Where?
He's in Cincinnati. He's playing in, it's called the Cloverbrook Open. This is just like a mini tour event.
How's he doing?
He just shot 64.
64.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we came on, he was on 16, and I told you I was like a little nervous. So after the first round, he's tied for the leads, which is pretty cool.
Little 64 action.
So
well, you'd have beat him by 3, but that's neither here nor there.
I can't hang with him anymore.
You can't lip wedge him to death.
That game is past. Yeah, those days are gone. So yeah, I'm super proud of him. And
now, how old is he now?
20, just turned 24.
24. Wow.
Yeah. So he's been a pro for 8-9 months or so.
Oh, that's awesome. He and McGirt have some loser leave town grudge matches.
Oh yeah, they play in practice a decent amount. He's great when he comes in. He gets to practice with guys like Brian Campbell, right, I used to work with, and so he's got a nice little base of, and he's in Nashville now, so he's hanging around with a bunch of mini tour guys there that
cool
push each other. So yeah, he's doing good.
Well, tell him to come down to Jupiter, come see me, come stay at the house. I'd like to get a few stories on Pop. I'm sure he can enlighten me.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd be happy to tell you everything that I've done wrong. But so I'm super proud of him. He's doing good. I'm really, I can breathe now. He finished off nicely there.
64. So. Well, that's got to make you as a dad happy. Okay, now I have a question for you since we're how hard is it, because I know you coach him, how hard is it separating the role of father and coach? Is that something that's easily done? Or is that something that you still struggle with? You guys still struggle with?
No, I'd say it's not easy. It's not easy at all, and I think we've gotten a lot better at it as he's gotten older, and I've learned, from my mistakes. It was very difficult as a junior golfer. I think my wife could speak to this probably better than me, but she's like the mediator. She's like the referee. It still is. But yeah, we've had plenty of come to Jesus meetings with mom where we've had a bad day on the lesson tee.
I'm going to tell mom. You go tell her.
Yeah, well, it's just, she asks how it goes, and she can always tell by the mood. But we went through some struggles, but I can happily say that our relationship is as strong as it's ever been now.
That's good.
But again, because we communicate well, and this could be a whole podcast. It's probably my, if I ever wrote a book, it'd be like how to be a better coach and a better dad. But I would say I'm a way better coach than I was a junior golf parent.
Yeah, well, it'd be tough.
The thing is, so one of the things we did sort of in the early days of, when he was in junior golf and then when he started college, was we would literally communicate, when we would go into a lesson that, hey, I'm taking the dad hat off and I'm putting the coach hat on.
Right.
And you need to do the same. Because, he has plenty, he was not the easiest student as well. And my wife would tell you that too. He's very hard-headed, and which I enjoy because, he has his own ideas, and he's got obviously a very high golf IQ for a kid growing up with a dad that's a teaching pro. And he's probably watched me give more lessons than anybody on the planet. He would used to sit in the bay and just watch me teach all the time. But, you start learning what what works and what doesn't work. And now I think because he's a lot more mature and then I've learned a lot from my mistakes, probably more than in like post round
Right.
conversations were never great because I couldn't take the dad or the coach hat off long enough to go, oh, hey, what happened on 14? Or like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what were you thinking about this decision when, and I coach this, and it's actually very valuable because I coach a lot of really good juniors to talk to their parents and go, hey, look, here's mistakes that I've made
Right.
as a dad, of like giving them time to process around whether it's good or bad, and giving them time to sort of, and don't just jump in on them and say, what the heck was that, like what,
Yeah.
what, and it's not good. Plus, it doesn't help the kid. But
Well, and it wouldn't be. I mean, it
yeah,
wouldn't be any different than you would approach somebody that you were coaching if they had just lost the club championship. You're not
right,
going to get right up in their face when. But
yeah,
as a parent, I would assume it's a lot easier to go, take the coach hat off and go, you got the chap over there on 16 that cost you the tournament.
yeah,
As opposed to going, hey, wait, let him decompress and the whole
yeah.
thing.
It's so I've learned a lot from sports psychologists, and Dr. McCabe has been
Yeah,
great. I always ask him questions, and my son's worked with him in the past, and you just learn things like, yeah, give him a couple hours, and for him it was like a day. I mean, it was literally like
yeah,
when and it's sort of like the changes that we make in his game. A lot of times, I think they're coming through, and then a day later, he's like, "Oh, I figured this out." It's like, "Oh, yeah." And my wife's great to like go, "I'm pretty sure that's what your dad told you
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
the last lesson." So, but you got to just again, it's just learning your student, and he's got I don't know if you've seen his swing on Instagram or on social, but he's got he does a lot of very interesting things in his golf swing. So it's going through not unlike me working with McGirt that has I think one of the coolest golf swings on tour
yeah.
because he breaks all the rules in a lot of respects of what we wouldn't teach, but he's the same way, and we sort of figured out along the way what doesn't work, which we call the non-negotiables, and what where he plays his best,
Well,
right?
and see,
And that's a
it's
two-way communication piece that we've developed over the
yeah.
years that really has been great. But I mean, I think overall it's strengthened our relationship as a dad and son because I'm doing a better job of like turning it off, especially after he plays a bad. Even now as a pro, like I'll kind of find myself digging into him. My wife would be like, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
cut
Mayday, Mayday.
that shit. Yeah, it's like okay, all right. So
Yeah.
and I'll come back and apologize and say, hey man, I'm sorry. I'm got emotional or whatever. But
But
yeah, it's
you made a great point where you said, we figured out what doesn't work, and we figured
yeah,
out what's best for the student, and you realize that you've got to leave the student's DNA attached. Phil Blackmore likes to call it their fingerprints,
yeah,
and everybody has their own swing fingerprints, and McGirt would be a prime example.
yeah,
You can't. Williams going to take the club up, elbow's going to fly out. He's
yep,
not rounding it out. It's not going to. It's always going to go up. That's his mo, and you've got to learn as an instructor to not take those pieces out or change those pieces too radically, um, or he can't perform. I mean, it'd be like taking Furyk and saying, "Okay, Jim, you need to work it around your body like Kuchar, or you're never going to be able to play."
yeah, yeah.
And
And
it's
that's the thing. It's like I think as us as and what I've learned really, in the last 10, 15 years, I've gotten better at is like, how do you work around unusual pieces and unusual patterns, right? And I've talked about this on
100%.
other podcasts, and that's the thing. It's like, yeah, here's just because it looks unusual doesn't mean it's not going to work. I mean,
Yeah,
he was swinging it back there like that. Will was swinging it back there like that before I even started working with him, right, 4 years ago. So
yeah.
and he's like, I made a million, so many $1 million with that backswing. It's not going to change because of the way he moves. Okay, his
No, and it's
limitations. He can't externally rotate his right shoulder, so that's why he looks that way, right? So we figure these things out as coaches and say, okay, well, cool. How do we work around that and then get the desired ball flight that we're trying to get? And most people, because
exactly.
when I posted on Instagram his swing, everybody's like, oh, he has, why has he shoved the club outside the ball? Because that's what he does. That's how he perceives the sweet spot. Why does he lift the clubs to the top? And then I go, guess what his ball flight is? And everybody would be like, oh, he hits fades. I'm like, no, he hits draws. Like
Yeah.
we've figured out his body, the way his body moves, and the pieces that we have to put together to create that, and how he plays the best. But
Yeah.
Nick's the same way. So it's very unusual. Super weak grip. Club face. I mean, he can't get it enough open at the top, like things that. Not to make this, I'm not the guest, but
Yeah.
you
Well,
ask,
yeah.
yeah, but it's a study that's worth looking into. It's like he's never played. If the club even looks remotely what we would consider square, he plays poorly.
Right.
And if the more open he gets it, the better he hits it.
Well, and that's the thing as a coach, we're going back to the young coaches. Don't be afraid to be different. Don't be afraid to teach something different. Don't be afraid. Um, you might put somebody in a stack and tilt pattern because that's what works better for them. You might take somebody and put them in an upright condition like Furyk or McGirt because that's what works for their pattern. There's no wrong answers. The only wrong answers are the ones that you limit yourself by with ego.
Yeah, I mean that's why we do all the research and the studying that we do of like different patterns are because we're allowed. That it allows me, like I can sit there and look at it and go, okay, well these are the other pieces that are required to match up to what he's doing in his backswing or with the club face or with his wrist angles or whatever, and I know the answers to that. And then it's up to us to like administer that, and then but again, getting feedback from the player is so crucial because I mean, I'll do something with Will, and he goes, "No, that's not going to work. Like
Yeah.
I can't do that." And I'm like, "Cool, we can
But
pivot,
see,
we can
that's
go
just
somewhere
it.
else." Yeah,
This might look better on camera. It might produce
yeah,
better numbers, but I can't play from there. And that's the
no,
biggest thing that I learned teaching tour players is just because it looks better, just because it says it's better, they can look at you and go, X, Y, and Z, not going to work from here. I can't do it.
no. They're the
And
boss,
you've got to, and
yeah,
that was a wild thing at first because to sit there and go, wait, I don't understand. Wait a second. You're here, wherever, or doing whatever, but you've got to. I'm putting you. Boy, that looks like Adam Scott. Are you telling me that doesn't work? Can't play from there.
yeah, yeah.
But
And I think I'm the king of like working with unusual looking swings, like, and I love that. I mean, I think, like I said, I think Will's is such a cool move.
it's awesome.
How we make it work, and I've got plenty of other kids. My guys look totally different, but again, it's just
Well,
building that relationship to where you can have time to work through the different options. That's the key, and that's
well,
where we are as
you need
coaches.
time and you need
Yeah,
expertise and you
yeah,
need complete buy-in from the player. And
100%.
that's the one thing that's tough on the tour level is to get them to buy in for long enough to say, I look back on it and for Faldo to have bought into what Ledbetter was teaching and said, hey, by the way, this is going to take you a while. And he said, it took, and everybody knows the story. It took him 2
Sure.
years and he wins the British Open. You sit there and you go, how long? 2 years? And that guy's supposed to know the player now. Nick Faldo can put his body in different positions, can move, he can do it. And,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden I've got this 27 handicapper that thinks that they should get it in 30 minutes. If I had the magic dust, I'd be a lot more expensive.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way, but it is a good lesson for the average player. Of like, I mean, everybody's heard the Tiger story when he tried to shorten his swing and change his swing after he won his first Masters, right? And it took him over a year to, and he calls Butch and says, "I got it." That's millions of golf balls, and that's his job, and he's the most talented player on the planet. Like, I mean, what are we talking about? 30 minutes. We can make some changes, but you better go grind on it
Yeah,
to
exactly.
create
But
a habit. It's like that's a whole nother learning process discussion. But it's like
yeah,
have a little give yourself a little grace. This game is really hard.
yeah, it is really hard. And, the older I get, like I said, I'm 54 now. And it's funny. I look back on my career and I go, I remember thinking, why can't this person put it in this condition?
Yeah.
Why can't it's not that hard? Why does it go out? I'm not talking. Let's take the movement patterns aside that
Yeah.
they couldn't physiologically get in those conditions, but But I realize now you've got a family, you've got a wife, you've got a job, you've got your charities, you've got your church, and then golf's about 700th on the list. Whereas mom and dad dropped me off and said, okay, knock yourself out. We'll see you at dark, every day for years. And perceptually, when I first started teaching, I was like, I don't understand why people can't do this.
I'm the
Well,
same way. Yeah, I'm the same way. Back to like the Shankers, it's like I think sometimes we got to file it under hand-eye coordination or lack thereof,
yeah,
right? But I mean, obviously we can diagnose it all we want. But it's like we still got to hit. We're hitting a thing with a stick and a
yeah, it's a crazy
little
game.
thing on the
Hey,
end of it.
I want to commend you on something. I watched a podcast that you did with Joe Mayo the other day. Really, really good work. Your podcasts are
Thank you.
fantastic, and that was a really interesting thing. And anybody that knows Joe, like we do in the industry, knows he's a polarizing individual, and loves to preach the gospel. But I just want to tell you that was definitely one of the best ones you've put out there. That
Oh,
was really
thank you.
good.
Yeah, I was, a long time coming, as we talked about, because he didn't, he swore off doing any presentations for a long time and podcasts, and I couldn't believe when we're just sitting there at RSM, and he's like, "All right, it's time to do." I'm like, "What?" Like, don't
Yeah,
don't tease me.
yeah, exactly. But
So I'm
that's
glad
it's
it came through. Yeah, it's been one of the most downloaded shows out there. So speaking of that, like talk about and I'll sort of piggyback this on because you're all over Instagram now doing swing tips and tips for average golfers, and I did see one where you said, okay, if I want to be shallow for chipping and I want to be steep for chipping, like talk me through what's your philosophy and ideas about short game.
it's so funny. I did a video and I called it, this has been, oh God, it's been probably 10, 15 years ago. It was, if you were more of a leading edge pitcher or a bounce pitcher. And I was thinking about it as listening to all Joe's stuff and that being in vogue now, and thinking back, I was always a player that was always steeper around the
Mm-hmm.
greens, and would say that pitching the golf ball around the greens from 30 to 30 yards and in is definitely by far the strongest part of my game. And I was thinking back on it. I don't, the whole thing about the bounce coming in shallow and gliding along the ground and then going back up, whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent, it just never made sense to me personally as a player. So, as we often do in instruction, we start teaching what we do.
Sure.
And I think for me, fortunately, I was more on the steep camp than the shallow camp, and happened to get a few factors in place to make it steeper. And so my short game lessons have been over the years probably more successful than they probably would have been had I been teaching other styles. Not saying shallow is wrong or steep's the only right one, but I'm just talking about
Sure.
any style,
Yeah, makes sense.
any methodology.
Yeah.
Um,
Are you measuring when you teach?
yes,
Sure.
I do with the right type of players.
Yeah.
That
Not
can,
for
that,
everybody, but yeah, I think it's
yeah, I
definitely
mean,
it's definitely helpful. And I'm right in that same camp as Joe. We teach
yeah,
pretty much exact same stuff, but yeah, I think it gives you validation of like,
sure.
I mean, I haven't seen anybody that's too steep
No,
that I've taught, and every time they're too shallow, they suck. I mean, it's just, I don't. It's like it's not my opinion.
yeah,
Just,
and it's hard to argue it with Frederick and Joe when it comes to the aspect of moving the vectors around. I mean, there's only a couple ways to do it. You either get steeper or you bring the angle of attack up, or there's something. I mean, you got to do something to move those vectors around so your spin loft's where it needs to be. And but I think for me, I always lean towards the steeper. I've certainly taught people more shallow if they're too steep. If they were too steep in the aspect of when I didn't know what I was doing. I thought they were too steep. So I teach them to shallow it out a little bit, so they were driving the club in the ground, as opposed to teaching them to kind of stand up a little bit. I didn't hadn't put my thoughts together in that realm yet. So
Makes sense. Yeah.
It kind of goes back to what do you teach now that you didn't teach then? There's a prime example.
Yeah, I didn't know it. And like again, I was back in before I met James Ridyard.
Great guy.
Which changed my whole idea about short game. Several years ago. Yeah, I was right in there, like throw the bounce at the ground and let the club head pass the hands, and I was just like, I had no idea. I mean, that's just all I knew, right?
Yeah,
and people were talking
and as I said,
about.
I
Nobody
don't
was
think
measuring this stuff like we are now. It's like that's
right.
crap. It just doesn't. It's not the way. That's not the way the guys are doing
it. It's interesting. You go back to Joe. He was teaching a lot of this before that was in vogue. He was teaching, the steep VSP before it's been, now it's starting to come in vogue. I mean, you got to give the guy credit for being on the leading edge and being a very studied and a very conscientious professional, that he's not sitting around doing, just saying. He likes to challenge the status quo and is very good at that in that regard. Whereas, I don't think I would have that personality to be that. I don't know if I'd like all the zingers coming at me. I don't know if I could handle it. But
we've always been at private clubs.
Yeah, exactly. I got to be nice. I can't.
It can't be that controversial,
No. I can't teach everyone the same thing, or I'll get killed.
Yeah.
But but I think I've always been steeper, so it's been good. I love the new stuff that's coming out. I can't wait to see what's next. I wish I was smart enough to come up with the next big thing, but I don't know. I don't know if that's
the club, man. It's like how you use the club is never going to change. That's
exactly.
That's the great thing.
But social
when you're on the, I'm sorry to cut you off there. When you're hitting shots yourself, like what's your angle of attack?
Oh God, I haven't measured it in quite some time, but I would say that it's got to be now, as steep as I am now in general, it's got to be 12, 13.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I still don't come up. I drive the club in the ground after the fact. So,
sometimes especially if you ever, I mean, it's probably similar in Jupiter, but we have super grainy approaches.
Oh, yeah.
If we're up in the upslope, I mean, I tell my player, like, if you stick it in the ground, make sure it's after the ball. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's avoidable. You can't. It's hard to.
You can't. But it's been fun. But I've certainly done that. But the social media thing, you asked me about that. The funny thing about that is, I never had dealt with social media. Basically,
That's why I ask you, because it's like this is a whole new kind of chapter for you that I haven't seen over the years. So, like, I know you got a little team around you there. It sounds like
I do.
So, talk about the process of like how you decide on what videos you're going to post, and what's the. It sounds like you got like 3 or 4 camera crews following you.
Well, what's funny is there's a lady here named Danielle Matthews, who is the wife of Brendan Matthews, who plays on the tour. Okay. And I was playing golf with him and another member at Jonathan's Landing, and incidentally, which is hysterical, I hit it about 250. That's as far as it's going. If I hit a sprinkler head and something else, it might go 260, but it's not. It's usually going 250. And I'm playing with these two guys, and Brandon hits it 4 miles.
Yeah, he sends.
And the other guy hits it just about as far. So I'm 100 behind them all day, and they just think it's the greatest thing ever. So, I'm trying to go, hey, look, I'm 54. I get to move up a set of tees. They were having none of it. So anyway, Brandon was nice enough to say that, I was talking about social media, and I said, look, I know zero. And when I say zero, I never had Facebook, Instagram. I had Twitter when it first came out for about 6 months. And then I got bored of that. I just don't like being tethered to my phone. I don't like it. I don't like the phones. I don't like to fiddle with them, and just I leave them in the car every chance I get. So Danielle has got a company called DM Creative House, and so she's a social media expert down here in Jupiter, and has taken over the reins. And basically, she comes in on the first part of the month, films me for half a morning, and then I go like this.
Yeah, you got it. She does all the editing
All
and
the editing. I mean,
posting and all that. Yeah,
they
yeah.
come up with. I
I
mean,
need that.
they'll give me a loose framework of what do you want to talk about, and
Sure.
I threw a couple. It's kind of a little random right now, just throwing a few tips up there, trying to figure out what works. I mean, I have an idea of direction I want to go as far as, I'm a lot more comfortable with the country club golfer now. Uh, I think that is where I find the most enjoyment. I don't enjoy teaching tour pros. I never did. It just too much living and dying. I had too much anxiety. I didn't like knowing, even if I was 1,000% right, that this could affect somebody's livelihood. I don't want that
Gotcha.
pressure. I don't,
Yeah.
Mr. Johnson comes to me for a lesson and doesn't get any better. He's still going to eat steak. His wife still loves him, and he's still going to be a member of the club. So life is, I tried my best, but I didn't wreck anybody's career or send them off, to a secondary tour in Clarksdale, Mississippi somewhere. Not to pick on Clarksdale. That was just where a 4 ball was. I remember.
Yeah.
But, so Danielle's done a hell of a job with that. And she's really taken that to the nth degree. I'll probably have more direction here soon. I'll probably move into a certain part of the game, which I'll keep, I'll keep private for right now, but I'll probably move into a certain part of the game that's a little bit more unique with my social media stuff, so I can start to develop kind of a following more in that direction as opposed to just
So
random.
when you first had the idea, like what's the purpose?
Well, for me, I was fortunate enough to be on the top 100 for 15 years. Then when I left and went to Mexico, I was put on the alumni side because I wasn't teaching in the United States, which totally understand. Top 100 teachers of America. Now, whether you agree or disagree with how that list is put together, the bottom line is for me that when I was growing up, that was the list that I wanted to be on. That's what I aspired to do. And so for me to get back into social media and get back in the thing was to get back on the lists, was to get back in the forum of, whether it be the Golf Digest Top 50, the Golf Magazine Top 100, Best in State. It's just to get. I'd been gone for 5 years and out of sight, out of mind, and so it's to get back into all that, to get myself back in the foray. And I missed. I was fortunate enough to be keynote speakers at a couple different things, and I want to go back to that. I'd love to present at the open forum. I'd love to present it at different things, and have some
Put it
great
out there,
ideas.
baby. This is how it works.
Well, that's my point.
No,
It's just
I mean, I appreciate you being honest, because it's like that. Yeah, whether we say we don't want to be recognized, we do, right? Because we work hard at what we do, and it's important that we're recognized by our peers or by our
and I
members,
think that's
and it brings credibility to your club, right? I mean, I applaud that. I mean, I'm glad that you shared that.
yeah, and for me, it just that was the most important thing in the sun, because I remember looking at that. The magazines would come and I'd look at the names on that list, and I was like, oh my God, if I could ever just be mentioned in a breath of some of those guys. And I still look at it. I still go when we go to the top 100 things, and you see some of the legends in our business.
Yeah.
And you look over there and you go, oh my God, there's so and so. That guy's forgotten more about teaching than I'll ever know. And I'm supposed to be this or I'm supposed to be that. And so you interact and you realize that they make the same mistakes that you do, and they're just a little bit more experienced. That's right. But it's been great. So that to me is where the social media came, and then not so much to drag the onesies and twosies off the street. I've got plenty of. Fortunately, we've got 1,200 members, so I've got more.
Yeah.
More than I can handle.
It's not to get more. Yeah, it's not to get more students. It's just more,
no. But I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. If you don't have a social media presence, you need to hire somebody, because if you don't know what you're doing, you can really devalue your brand quickly if it looks like crap. I know, because just some of the stuff that I posted earlier, Danielle was like, "Oh no, we're not doing that anymore. Matter of fact, you don't touch your social media." So
yeah, it's good to have a team behind.
That's all good. But no, it's been great though. So I've been very lucky.
That's awesome. Well, you'll get back on the list, I'm sure.
We'll see. I'll right behind you.
Yeah, hopefully.
There you go. Well, no, it's been, I've had a great career, 32 years worth, never worked a day in my life. Um, I figure that I still go to the golf course. I still get paid to teach golf. I live in Jupiter, Florida. It can't be much
amazing.
worse.
No, that's incredible.
I'm very
Dude,
lucky.
I appreciate you taking all this time, and
No worries.
always great to catch up. And I know we talk and text all the time, but I've been wanting to get you back on here because I love you and we're brothers.
You
So
got it, baby.
I appreciate it. So you got to answer one more question.
Yes, sir.
You know what's coming. So if you had a gigantic billboard and you had to get a message to the world, to billions of people, metaphorically speaking, of course, what would your billboard say and why?
I just hope that people remember me as a nice person. That I try to do a little bit more than the status quo. That's all I care about. As long as I can do that and make a positive influence on somebody's life, somebody's golf game, then I've done my job.
It's good, man. That's
Life
simple.
is good.
It's simple,
Simple.
and distinct. Yeah.
What's what a lot of money in therapy will do for you.
I hear you. I need a lot more therapy, clearly. But yeah, we're doing all right, man. I appreciate you taking the time.
Anytime, buddy. And keep up the great work, and not only on the lesson tee, but on the podcast. And as I said, it's a true treat to call you a friend and a mentor. And I love you, brother. Just keep on, keep it on.
So before we close, let everybody know how they can follow all your amazing videos on Instagram. And
all right. So Instagram at Tom Stickney Golf. Tom Stickney Golf. Yeah, just Tom Stickney Golf. That's pretty much it. If you want to find me, I'm easy to find. Not too many Tom Stickneys out there teaching golf.
All right, my man. You're the best.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Yes,